Hello, beloveds, and welcome to Christian Emotional Recovery, a podcast for those who are survivors of childhood trauma, emotional neglect, and narcissistic abuse. This podcast is hosted by Rachel Leroy, a college professor and trauma survivor. Many of us spend years trying to heal and don't get anywhere. We don't always target the trauma itself, which is so often what keeps us stuck. This podcast is where faith meets science. Rachel is an emotional healing expert with 20 years of experience applying healing modalities that helped her start making progress after nothing else worked. She'll show you how to do the same. Each week, we'll cover a topic that will show you how to heal trauma for good. Please check out our website and show notes at christianemotionalrecovery.com and join the Facebook community, Trauma Survivors Unite, Christian Emotional Recovery.
Hello, beloveds, and welcome to podcast number 23 on Christian Emotional Recovery. I am Rachel Leroy, and I am doing a series of podcasts that include practices that can heal trauma. And the first one is traditional Christian practices that can heal trauma. The second one is mind practices that can heal trauma. And the third one is today's podcast in the series of 4, and it is body practices to release trauma. And the final one in the series will be practices to heal trauma with a licensed professional, particularly body therapies. So those are the 4, and in the series of specific modalities that can help to heal trauma. And just reviewing a little bit, the first one in the traditional practices that we did, since this is a podcast that is informed by Christian beliefs, and that was scripture and devotionals, teachings, sermons, and prayer and praise and worship. And those were the 5 traditional practices that can help heal trauma. But one of the reasons I started this podcast was because a lot of those traditional modalities in of themselves don't necessarily release trauma from the body. They can heal some people, and everybody's different. And the human mind and the human body are so complex that you just have to experiment and see what works for you. Use discernment, pray, use the traditional practices, and also make sure that your only purpose in worshiping God is not to get healing, even though that's a byproduct of it, and then have specific times where you do those things for healing. The disclaimer that I put in every time is that Christian practices shouldn't be solely done, like I said, for therapeutic benefit alone, though it's okay to do these for that reason sometimes. These should be done for their own sake as well, and these practices have healing and therapeutic benefits. For some, traditional practices are enough to heal, but for many, they aren't. And for that reason, that's why I started this whole channel. That's why I started this whole podcast, because I think it's time to talk about taking an integrative approach to emotional healing, to healing childhood trauma, childhood abuse, and childhood neglect, and to address the root of where those things come from, but with a Christian perspective in mind. So what happens if those traditional things aren't enough to help you heal? If this is the case, there is nothing wrong with you. I'll say it again, there is nothing wrong with you. You don't lack enough faith. You're not deficient, and it's not your fault. Anyone who says or implies this to you is wrong. A lot of people mean well, but they are not informed and educated on the trauma, what it is, the nature of trauma, and how that stuff gets stuck in the brain and in the body. And so they may mean well, and they may not. I don't know. I can't judge. But understand that when people say things like that to you, it's out of ignorance. And I'm not saying to hate those people or to resent them. I'm just saying that there's more to this than that. And you need to stop listening to people who say things like that. Moreover, I believe God gave us these alternative therapies, the body practices, the mind practices, the therapies that we can do with professionals, and He wants us to use them because He knew some would need them. If they help people heal when nothing else does, these therapies are a gift from God to restore us to Him, Him to us, and restore us to our loved ones and ourselves. And that's the disclaimer that I'm putting on all of these podcasts in terms of the specific practices. So let's jump straight into the body practices, which is the one that we're doing today. Now, like I said, we've already covered traditional practices, traditional Christian practices, and we've also already covered the mind practices. Keep in mind also that these are not a final authority on body, mind, or traditional Christian practices. There are many others that I haven't included, but these were the ones that I decided from my experience by doing research and by looking at the most common and popular and effective ones that I would choose. So look at other modalities besides the ones that I'm sharing with you in these podcasts, because there are others out there that are very healing and very effective, and they may work very well for you. So the body practices to release trauma that we'll cover today are exercise, and we'll talk about different types of exercise because there are a lot of subcategories there. EFT, which is called emotional freedom technique or tapping, based on the meridian points in the body in Chinese medicine. Breath work, breathing, grounding, and some of these do overlap, but I'm putting them in their own categories because they're very specific practices that can help in separate ways. And music and sound therapy. So let's jump straight into the first body practice, which is exercising. This is a big one, so bear with me. There's a lot of different practices of exercise that can help heal you. I'm focusing for the sake of this podcast to narrow it down a little bit on trauma, but if you have difficult emotions or any kind of mental health conditions, I believe that all of these practices can help heal you. So follow along. Exercise for healing trauma and difficult emotions can take many forms, such as cardio, dance, weights, biking, yoga, tai chi, Qigong, and martial arts and sports, among others. As with all of these practices, use discretion, discernment, and exploration when deciding which approach is best physically, mentally, and spiritually. If you're not sure, speak with a medical professional. Additionally, practices like yoga, Qigong, and Tai Chi aren't for everyone, so use the best judgment and prayer to decide what practices in these areas can help you. Look at the scriptures. If you feel like it's just not something that you want to experiment with, then don't do it. Don't do it. But like I said, the other extreme is I've heard a story about this. I can't remember who it was, but this man had this debilitating disease that caused him to be in chronic pain, his joints, his bones, his muscles, and he was just all bent up, and he was a vital, strong, athletic man, and he slowly crumpled over the course of a couple of years and ended up in a wheelchair, and he was in unbearable pain, and he had people of the church pray over him, and he did everything that he could. He tried traditional stretches, he tried everything, and they helped a little, but he was not getting relief. And somebody recommended to him doing yoga, and he was very hesitant about it for understandable reasons, and he talked to his minister about it and prayed about it, and his minister said, if you're in pain and if nothing else has worked, do the yoga. And so he did it with discernment, and he slowly started to get his movement and his mobility back. And over the course of months, he was able to get out of his wheelchair and walk. And then he was able to become fully mobile again, and his pain went away because of doing yoga. And like I said, I'm not saying that everybody should do yoga, and I'm not saying that people should, just ignore their discernment. But this guy, people in the church, when they found out he was doing yoga, actually left the church and shunned him. And I'm sorry, but in my humble opinion, that is not Christian. This guy was in pain. Jesus healed people that were in pain. And this man tried everything else, and it didn't work. And so he did yoga, and he found relief. And I believe that was a gift from God. And these people actually shunned him for using his discernment. And I'm sorry, but what was he supposed to do? Stay in pain? if that was the only thing that would help him, no, I'm sorry, but I think that the preacher, in my humble opinion, gave him the right advice. And if it helped him, it did not lead him astray. It did not lead him to another religion. He continued to see Christ as the center of his life, and he did stretches and breath work that helped him to open his body back up and heal. And I'm just saying that in that situation, I don't think that they handled that in a way that showed that they were trying to help their brother heal. They were more interested in rules and in legalities. And I think in that case, in my opinion, they got it wrong. And I think the preacher got it right. And I think that man getting healing was a gift from God. And I think that, if it made him feel better, I'm not saying we should sell our souls for our healing. That's not what I'm saying. But it did not lead him astray. And I think that the yoga was a gift and it did heal him. You don't have to do all the weird woo-woo spiritual practices of yoga if you don't want to. You can just do the breathing and the relaxing and the stretching and the namaste. The namaste is simply, I honor and salute you as a person. And, we should do that to each other every day anyway. So that's just a little side story of, don't knock it till you try it. And there are going to be people who are going to give you a hard time about it. And you have to really look at the situation and look at the big picture and really ask some hard questions. So with exercise, like I said, use discretion, explore, discernment, all that. So in terms of exercise, the how it works and how to do it, like I said, it's so broad. There's so many that you'll need to go and do some of your own research. You'll need to use discernment, and you'll need to experiment on your own. So since there are so many forms of exercise and movement that can heal you, I'll just discuss the general effects of exercise and a few that target healing trauma specifically. So yoga can be a healing practice because when you are in the grip of trauma, your breathing is fast, your body tense, and terror, that feeling of terror and fight or flight can be overpowering. Yoga allows you to stretch, breathe, slow down, and become less reactive in your emotions. It helps your parasympathetic nervous system. Yoga and Tai Chi loosen the muscles, relax the mind, and increase focus to decrease stress. They increase activity in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and which is the center for reasoning, so you can be less reactive, choose to respond instead of reacting, and release trauma. And when I've done specific stretches in specific areas of the body, really focusing in on the body and grounding, it makes me feel like I'm real. And if you've experienced trauma, you know what it means to feel outside of your body and not feel real. So it grounds you. And I can actually feel, like when I'm doing hip stretches, for example, I can feel emotional tensions just filtering through my nervous system and releasing. It literally releases emotions, stressful emotions from the body and from the mind. It increasing your heart rate and moving your body in the good way also reduces stress and improves brain function, all activities that can help release trauma from your body and rewire your brain. So evidence of its impact on trauma healing. Aerobic exercise reduces depression and can prevent traumatic episodes. If I were to cite studies for every claim that I'm making, this podcast would be 2 hours, but you can look it up. There are a lot of studies that back that, but I will give some background here. From a source that is the NCBI. The NCBI, it is Frontiers in Psychiatry Journal, and it's basically a scholarly article that says Exercise Intervention in PTSD, a narrative review and rationale for implementation. And it's by Hegberg, Hayes, and Hayes. So you can look up the article if you want to, and I'll try to include a link in the information. But getting straight to how aerobic exercise can help with healing PTSD. The quote says, aerobic exercise has the potential to exert a positive impact on PTSD via both psychological and and neurophysiological mechanisms such as exposure and desensitization to internal arousal cues, enhanced cognitive function, exercise-induced neuroplasticity, normalization of hypothalamic pituitary axis HPA function. That's the thing that balances your hormones and the functioning in your brain, and reduction in inflammatory markers. So it has marked physical, mental, and health benefits. And that's from that NCBI article, and I'll post it. It also says large studies show that people who have been through one or more adverse childhood experiences have not only poor mental health outcomes, but also higher incidence of heart disease, diabetes, and cancers. And so it cuts back on those negative effects as well. And another article says the New Georgetown Law Report argues that since the effects of trauma can be physical, body-mind, in quotation marks, body-mind is one thing here, interventions like yoga can be uniquely able to address these issues. Regulated breathing, for example, calms the parasympathetic nervous system. Practicing staying in the moment counteracts some of the dissociative effects of trauma. And the physical activities of yoga, of course, can directly improve your health. And that's based on an NPR article. And the NPR article is called The Role of Yoga in Healing Trauma. The Role of Yoga in Healing Trauma, and that's NPR, and it's written by someone named Anya Kamenetz, Kamenetz. Sorry if I butchered her name. But so that, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. Other exercises have similar impacts as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Recommended resources in terms of exercise, start with beginning yoga videos. There are yoga instructors that do the yoga from a Christian perspective. So if that's something that you're interested in, Google that. There are a lot of teachers out there. There are a lot of teachers that do stretching and breathing exercises, aerobic exercises, and exercise specifically geared towards emotional healing. So you can look those up as well. Recommended resources, Christian videos and audios that can be good background music for yoga could also help keep you in that Christ mindset. But experiment with different sports, forms of exercise, and therapeutic movement programs. Start small and work large, and find what combination works for you. And I cannot emphasize enough just going for a walk, how therapeutic that can be. A leisurely walk if you're not feeling well or you're starting small, and then a quicker, more brisk, longer walk as you become more used to it. That's where you combine nature, exercise, exposure, and just connecting with everything around you in the physical movement that helps to heal your body and mind. But there are many great programs, DVDs, personal trainers, equipment, apps, and guided videos that you can get for free. Like on YouTube, you can get a lot of videos for free there. There are subscriptions where you pay a small fee per month. I use a subscription app, and I used to have a gym membership, which was about $30 a month. And some of the subscription apps where you can do workouts or part of it is workouts is like $10, $15 a month. So well worth the money if you use them consistently. $30 a month gym membership, if you use it, well worth it as well. And a weighted hula hoop is another affordable form of exercise that I use. If you get stuck in your house a lot, that's something you can do. You can also get one of those things you step on and do like, I do weights and I'll step up on it and step down and do that over and over. And that gives me a good moderate aerobic workout while also doing some weights on my upper body. So there's a lot of different things you can do. I also do guided aerobic exercises with weights, which allows me to get cardio and weights at the same time. So there's a lot of different things you can do to balance that out. I think it's good to do a combination of vigorous exercise and more moderate exercise. So many people will put exercise on a back burner. I've been guilty, and only do it, quote, if they have time. Please, 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 especially if you have health issues or if you have mental health issues, make exercise a priority as many days as possible. Even if it's a 30-minute walk, going out and connecting with nature, breathing fresh air, getting your heart rate up and listening to the birds, those can have immense therapeutic effects on your body and your mind. So I encourage connecting connection to nature while exercising because its healing effects are unmatched, in my opinion. So see what's out there. That's a little bit that's just the tip of the iceberg on how exercise has therapeutic and healing effects on trauma, PTSD, and difficult emotions. Jumping straight into the second one. The second one is called EFT. And if you're not familiar with EFT, it'll sound strange at first. The first time I saw somebody do EFT on a video on YouTube, I actually laughed at it. I thought it was the most stupid, ridiculous, absurd, dorky thing I'd ever seen. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it really works and it really helps. So it's not something that I can really show you since this isn't a video. So I encourage you to use the resources that I'm including here, or maybe some others that you can find. But it's one of those where you need to get a guide. A PDF with pictures is good. Even better is a video of somebody actually doing it. And what EFT is, it's called Emotional Freedom Technique, also called tapping, and you literally tap on the meridian points of your body. There's parts of your body where when you feel of them, they feel more sensitive. That's what those meridian points are. And it basically, you'll say something and tap these different points over and over while you say something, and it's supposed to release an emotion and help actually heal you in the moment. And it's really good for like phobias and anxiety, and it helps you to bring those down. So you'll like measure the level. Let's say your anxiety's an 8, you're almost having a panic attack, and you take the issue that you're having an issue with and you'll say something about it that's really bothering you, and you'll start to release that from your body while you tap on those meridian points. And you'll do that, maybe pick another statement that's related to it that's also causing anxiety on the same issue, and you'll tap on that. And then basically, once you get that particular thing out of your body, you never have to deal with that one particular thing again, because supposedly it literally releases that emotion and that issue out of your body. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have issues in that area, but that one particular area, it heals it, and it's very effective. According to the Tapping Solutions Foundation, the practice consists of tapping with your fingertips on specific meridian points while talking through traumatic memories and a wide range of emotions. The website's listed, as always, with those use prayer, scripture, and discernment regarding if this technique is for you. There are a lot of Christian people that use this strategy, and there are Christian people that actually teach it. So it's a little more accepted, I think, in Christian communities, because you can definitely keep it as a psychological practice, and it doesn't have to be woo-woo or anything like that. And also, it's based on Chinese medicine, and scientific evidence is showing more and more the validity of practices in Chinese medicine, the legitimate applications of that work. Also, if something starts in a science lab and is proven and then becomes holistic practice, we don't necessarily question it. But if it's the other way around, people tend to question it more until science backs it up. But EFT has much science to back it up, since it has become mainstream in the last couple of decades. So it's a pretty respected practice, even though it is a bit strange at first if you've never seen or heard of it. But once you get used to it, it's not that big of a deal. A little bit more on how it works and how to do it. I will use the website's article to explain it. The website is tappingsolutionfoundation.org, tappingsolutionfoundation.org, and I'll put the source below as well. And I'll read from this website to give you more insight, because I think their words are better than my words to describe this. It's kind of hard to explain. So tapping contains too much information to put in this chart, to put in this what I'm saying here. So go do some more research on it and see what it's all about. But the article is, what is tapping and how does it work? Tapping gives you the power to heal yourself, putting the control over your destiny back into your own hands. The practice consists of tapping your fingertips on specific meridian points. The ones I use are the top of my head, the inside of my eyebrow, the outside of my eyebrow, the base of my chin, that place the dimple. It's not a dimple, but like a hollow in your chin, between your teeth and your chin. And then the sensitive point on my chest, on my collarbone. And then there's a sensitive point under your armpit. It's not in your armpit, but under it. And then I just do those over and over again. Those are the ones I use. But it takes you through traumatic memories and a wide range of emotions. A meridian point, what is a meridian point, is basically certain points that can be mapped throughout the body. Energy circulates through your body along specific network of channels. You can tap into the energy at any point along the system, and those are the sensitive points of the body if you don't want to get too woo-woo about it. How does tapping work? The basic technique requires you to focus on the negative emotion. Seems counterintuitive, but it's to release that stuff, and then you can do positive ones too. But to release a negative emotion at hand, ones that are just overwhelming you, that tapping works really well to bring those down and get them out of your body. I can tell you it works. For example, fear, anxiety, bad memory, unresolved problem, anything that's bothering you. While maintaining your mental focus on the issue, use your fingertips to tap 5 to 7 times. That's through all the meridian points on each of the 9 body's meridian points, tapping on these meridian points while concentrating on accepting and resolving the negative emotion. You don't push it away, you let it come through, you accept it. And that will access your body's energy, restoring it to a balanced state. Those are called acupressure points. That's another name for them. And then it just talks about how many people are using tapping, like 10 million people worldwide. It's probably more now. But I'll link the article. It's the Tapping Solution Foundation, and they're kind of the authority on this, but there's a lot of really good resources on it as well. So that's a little bit about what tapping is and how it works. Evidence of it healing trauma. Like I said, I was skeptical of tapping at first. The first time I saw it, I laughed. I thought it was absurd until I saw the strong research evidence, and then I had an open mind and I tried it. And yeah, it felt weird and awkward at first, but I pushed through that. So that awkward phase, push through it and give it a chance before you assume that it doesn't work. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it does seem to help a lot of people. The amount of testimonials of its ability to heal difficult emotions and trauma are also pretty strong, and I use it myself. But the links, I'll provide links to other resources, including the Tapping Solution Foundation, and EFT for Christians. There's another resource there. So recommended resources. The most authoritative source on tapping and EFT is the book, The Tapping Solution, A Revolutionary System for Stress-Free Living by Nick Ortner. And I've got that book myself, and I've read some other books on tapping. It's called The Tapping Solution by Nick Ortner. So you can look that one up. And if you can get some kind of visual to go with it, or an audio, if you have the audio book, go to their website and look at some of the video guides and the PDFs, and that'll help you to be able to do it a lot more easily. Also, the website, YouTube videos, and PDFs are put out by this organization that are free. They do put out a lot of free resources, and that's a good place to get started. Other experts, healers, and writers have also put out good resources on the technique, and like I said, I will link some of those resources, including the Tapping Solution Foundation, tappingsolution.com, and EFTforchristians.com. Those are some of the resources. And then, so my advice from these experiences, from my experience, and this is just my experience, everybody's different. When I first saw tapping, I already told you I laughed at it. I thought it was absurd. However, I was open-minded enough to continue investigating it, and I became interested in it and learn it. And once you learn it, it's not that complicated. It feels that way at first, but it really isn't once you learn it, though it can seem so at first. I started trying it, and I literally felt emotions and energy discharging from my body when I tapped on specific issues with great feeling. It doesn't necessarily feel good while you're doing it, but oh my gosh, the relief that it brings is amazing. But I followed the directions too, and then once you learn the basics, then you can kind of find the way that works best for you and change it up a little bit. But this technique has the power to viscerally remove emotions from the body, the trauma in the body, and healing trauma such as fear, terror, anger, upset, shame, and sadness. It can release a lot of those emotions. Does it get to the root of what caused it? In some cases, yes. In other cases, no, but it does really help with those in-the-moment things that are just blocking you. It helps you to release those emotional blocks so you can find some relief. And it's very good for things like phobias. And there are people that have claimed their phobias have been cured in minutes. And things like that, anytime I see a claim like that, I'm very skeptical. I'm like, yeah, right. But I'm not so sure that EFT hasn't done that for some people in some situations. And I'm not going to make a guarantee that that's going to happen for you. But if you do EFT and you do it following the directions and you do it sincerely, I will guarantee that you'll find some relief from it. I think it'll really help. And so that's body technique number 2. Moving to body technique number 3, which is breath work. Now, that's a very broad term. And again, there are a lot of sub-practices that you can do and a lot of different ways you can do breath work. And this one, you probably understand what it means. And it's not an uncommon Christian practice when we're talking about overcoming our fear, and the Bible talks about overcoming fears. What do you actually do to overcome your fear? The Bible says, fear not, but how do you not fear? Or how do you get to a place where at least your fear isn't controlling you? And breathing, as simple as it sounds, a specific, focused, consistent, relaxed kind of breathing can have immense healing effects on the body, on calming the body and mind, and on releasing trauma from the body and mind. And it also works in conjunction with almost every other practice that you can do that I've listed or anywhere else. So breathing, to me, is the foundation of every other practice that we do. Breathing is our anchor, along with God being our anchor. So if you wanted to think of it in the mind, God can be the anchor, and then in the body, your breath is your anchor. So breath work is using and focusing slow, deep breaths at specific intervals, usually counting slowly for each breath cycle to calm and focus the mind and body. There are several types of breath work that can reduce anxiety and help calm and heal the trauma response and help the parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing slows your heartbeat, calms your nerves, and clears your mind. It can be used on its own or in conjunction with meditation, mindfulness, and other practices. So, a little bit about breathing. How does it work? It is proven to heal the body and the mind by increasing the sympathetic nervous system's response. It slows down the trauma response from the amygdala, and it decreases cortisol levels in the body that create reactivity. Moreover, over time, this can reprogram the brain's triggers and their reactions to a chosen response to specific stressors, triggers, and situations. So basically, if there's something that triggers you, if you start using your breath as soon as you notice that response, that reaction, then it slows that response down, and it allows you to choose to stay in control of your mind and to be able to have a different response in the body. And now for this one, I've included several resources as well. Evidence of the impact on trauma healing, the breath. There are endless studies that back the fact that breathing, breath work, specific kinds of breath work help to heal your body of trauma, help to decrease the trauma response, and help to release that trauma impact out of the body, as well as help you to deal with and process difficult emotions. For example, when you use Acorn, doing the breathing and staying grounded in the breath through that whole process helps you to be able to do that successfully. You always want to breathe, no matter what's going on. Breathe. And I will create some meditations that include breath work when I am able to in the near future. And I'll put those on YouTube and maybe put some for sale. But the effects of, there's one article, also Frontiers in Psychology, and it's put out by NCBI, the National Institutes of Health. And it's the effect of diaphragmatic breathing on attention, negative affect, AFFECT, and stress in healthy adults. And there's a whole study on it. I'm not going to read it, but that's one very reputable source that shows the effects of specific breathing on the body and the mind. And then another study is How Breathing Calms Your Brain and Other Science-Based Benefits of Controlled Breathing. And this article is put out by Forbes, and it was written by David DeSalvo. It's called How Breathing Calms Your Brain and Other Science-Based Benefits of Controlled Breathing. And it goes into detail all the benefits. It says controlling your breathing calms your brain. Breathing regulates blood pressure. Counting breaths taps into the brain's emotional control regions, those parts of the brain that I was talking about. The rhythm of your breathing affects memory. Controlled breathing may boost your immune system and improve energy metabolism. So it talks about both the mental and the physical healing effects of that. And of course, you know that trauma and those emotions can hurt your health and your immune system. And so that kind of brings it back to a place where it's healthy. So it counters not only the mental root of the effects, but also helps the physical effects of these kinds of stressors as well. And then there is one more article, and it's put out by Helpline.com, and it's what is diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragm, you breathe from the diaphragm. So you breathe, you probably, if you've ever taken music or something, you know you'd go from that deep place inside of you. You don't breathe shallow from the throat. You breathe in the belly. Do it right now. Breathe through the nose, breathe in, but do it from the diaphragm. Make sure your diaphragm expands. Hold it for a couple of seconds. Relax. Don't tense up. Now let it all out slowly. And that's diaphragmatic breathing. And breathing with your belly. I can't go into all the details because of the length of this podcast. I may actually expound on some of these practices by doing different podcasts for some of these and actually teaching you some of this. But diaphragmatic breathing benefits: it helps you relax, it lowers your heart rate, it helps lower your blood pressure, it helps you to cope with symptoms of PTSD, it improves your core muscle stability, it improves your body's ability to tolerate intense exercise, it lowers your chances of injury or wearing out your muscles, and it slows your rate of breathing so it expends less energy. And it basically, this article gives you the steps on how to do diaphragmatic breathing, and it gives you steps, and it talks about how to do rib stretch breathing, numbered breathing, and what happens during diaphragmatic breathing, what it does to your autonomic nervous system and your breath, the risks and the research. I used to do this, and I would do it very tense, thinking I was relaxed, and I would be almost neurotic about counting and about every detail of my breath. That doesn't help. When you do this, there's a certain discipline to it, but there's also a certain letting go. So I would be more concerned about letting go and relaxing than in trying to be perfect with it. Don't try to be perfect. Learn as you go, and you'll get better and better at it, and just let go and let the breathing be. Let your body breathe itself. Does that make sense? And so read this article. It's a good place to start. And it's the Helpline one, and it's what is diaphragmatic breathing. And it just gives you a good breakdown of it, how to do it, the risks, the benefits, things to know, and all that. Okay, great article. Other things to note about breath work. I'll include articles here for you to find so you can do more research and maybe even get into it. But there are so many videos, articles, courses, guided meditations, websites, and books on breath work. Use discernment and find what resonates with you. But there are many types of breathing techniques as types of people. So, I've already included some articles, but there are some great guided meditations on YouTube, on Insight Timer, and other places that can help you learn how to do breathing work. Perhaps include, maybe think about doing some kind of guided one if you're not sure where to start. And, use some discernment on which one you choose. But there's a lot of great guided ones out there. I know they don't all get woo-woo or weird, so it's fine. Find one that is you're comfortable with. Another one that some people do, and this one's very controversial, I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying you should do it or shouldn't do it, but Kundalini breathing is another kind. And there's different kinds where, like, one is where you breathe in through one nostril and out through the other a certain amount of times in a controlled way, and then you reverse it and do the other one. And each of these, some of them are meant to like awaken and invigorate, and other ones are meant to calm you down. So you can do some research on that, but Kundalini does tend to be a little more controversial in Christian circles, and it's simply a subcategory of yoga, but it's one of the ones that people tend to, like I said, there's a little more controversy there, but I did want to put it out there as one thing that some people use. And for them, a lot of them, they just use the breathing techniques and the focus on the mind and the relaxation, and that's it. But you can just focus on Christ, stillness, calm, and your breath and counting, and do some of the Kundalini breathing if it's something that you want to look into. But like I said, use your discernment. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just putting it out there. But breathing, I think that's a practice that everybody should do. I'm not saying that for a lot of practices, but breath work is the basis of calming your body, calming your mind. And I think every other practice you do, you're going to use breath work. So if you start in one body practice, start with your breath and practice breathing. And then when you get in a stressful situation where your body tightens up and something triggers a trauma response or a stress response, not everything is trauma, but use that technique and practice it, and you'll get better and better at it. Like everything, it's not going to work if you do it one time. You do it over and over and over and over and over until you rewire your brain and it becomes part of you, and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. And if you forget it, you come back to it. You forget it, you come back to it. You quit, you come back, you come back, you come back, you come back. You never stop. That's how you heal. That's how you heal. So the next practice, the fourth one, is grounding. Now, grounding is another one that has a lot of subcategories. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so I'm just going to give one basic definition here. And some of the stuff that I'm doing, all these body and mind practices, can be considered grounding. But I wanted to use it as its own category because I think it's so important. And again, I would argue if you've suffered from the effects of trauma and you're disconnected from your body or disconnected from your mind, and you experience a lot of difficult emotions, and you're just all over the place mentally and physically. A lot of people that have experienced extensive trauma, they'll say things like that they don't feel real. They'll feel like they're not in contact with their body. They feel like they're in a dream. And we've all had traumatic experiences where it didn't feel like it was really happening, and our mind just couldn't process it. But it's like for some people, that trauma, because the amygdala replays it viscerally over and over, a lot of people feel that way a lot of moments of their life, or maybe even all the time, because they've been conditioned and wired that way. So grounding allows you to come back into your body. It allows you to recontact so that you feel real. It helps you to just think about each part of your body and just feel yourself. That's me. That's me. I'm here. I'm real. I'm me. And that's what grounding really does. A common experience for people, like I said, who are reliving trauma or are under stress is that they don't feel real. They're not in the here and now. And mindfulness helps you to get in the here and now and is one form of grounding. And they feel disconnected from their bodies. I know I've felt that way a lot. Grounding is a way to literally ground a person, bring them back into their body, reconnect them with their body and functioning mind. And one thing, a lot of people that start healing from trauma, they've been trapped in that surreal place their whole life. Suddenly they'll say things like, colors are more vivid. They feel more connected to themselves. Everything feels sweeter. They just feel integrated, and everything is more vivid and more. It's like they can feel themselves in their skin in a good way, and they feel like an actual person, and they feel like they're actually operating from their own mind out into the world as themselves. And before, they didn't even feel like they were an actual person. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never experienced it, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are several ways to ground oneself. Breathing is one. I made it its own category because I believe it's so fundamental. Some of the other strategies are somatic therapy. Somatic means in the body. And by Peter Levine does a really good course on that. Peter Levine, somatic therapy. And it overlaps with grounding. But since there are so many kinds, I did make somatic therapy its own category for the next podcast. We'll go to that later. Now, a little bit more about grounding. How does it work? How to do it? We'll go over a few techniques from the articles on grounding. Also check out the recommended resources that I'll include. But grounding allows you to come back into your body, and there are many ways to do that, including body scans. You've probably seen the ones where you breathe and you become aware of and feel mindfully each part of your body, one part at a time. That's one way, and that's very effective. Perhaps also another one is exercise, and that includes yoga and Tai Chi. It makes you more aware of your body, it centers you, it integrates you, and it helps you to come back into yourself with the grounding type of breathing along with it. Giving your mind something to focus on besides the trigger of the trauma or the trauma itself is another thing. For example, art, dance, playing music, playing the piano, those can also be grounding therapies. They're starting to find the healing benefits of those on the brain is immense. So doing any kind of art, coloring, and doing music, singing, connecting with the body and feeling the body calm down are all benefits of grounding. So a little bit about the evidence of grounding. Grounding allows you to relive trauma in the body, lower your stress response, and rewire your brain so that you actually discharge trauma and painful emotions from your autonomic nervous system. And those reactions are what keep you disconnected from the here and now, from reality, from full in-living color, from feeling your body fully and like you're in it and like that's you. You know what I mean? So it reconnects you, it reintegrates you. And some of the recommended resources, one that I said that really helped me, and like I said, use discernment as always, but Peter Levine is a licensed psychologist. He has a PhD. He's been doing this work for 30 plus years, and he has a powerful technique called somatic experience where you'll actually relive a traumatic event. So it is something to do with caution. Make sure you're ready. And he uses a full experience of body trauma work to help you start from the inception of that to releasing it. And it's all in the body the whole time that you do it. Everything in it is grounding, and it's meant to actually release traumatic experiences from the body through that experience. You could also start with YouTube videos or books, but that course gives you a step-by-step process to release trauma from your body by grounding. And he gives you a lot of different techniques. It's not just one thing. An article on a few grounding techniques instructions. This one is by Dr. Sarah Allen, and it's called 7 Simple Grounding Techniques for Calming Down Quickly. DrSarahAllen.com. 7 Simple Grounding Techniques for Calming Down Quickly. I'll include it in the resources, and it talks about why grounding helps to calm you down. 7 grounding techniques. One is called the grounding chair, sitting in a chair and doing grounding. Another one is the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, and then you go through your senses, and it connects you back with your body. Hold something and really focus on it, like a stone, a gem, maybe a relaxation thingy, anything like that. Even your cat or your dog can ground you, and that's why a lot of people use animals for therapy, among many reasons. Let your thoughts come and go is another one, and it gives you how to do that. It's kind of like observing your mind, being the witness. Distract yourself. I would use that one with caution, but like if you have anxiety and there's a specific outside trigger, like my noisy neighbors drive me nuts, so I'll actually go do something else away from where I can even hear them. And in those kinds of moments, distracting yourself can be helpful. But if you're just avoiding an emotion that's inside of you, I don't think that's always the right thing to do, unless maybe it's something so traumatic that you need to give yourself time to be ready to process it. I think that's different. Draw around your foot in your mind. That's a strange one, but give it a try. Get your adrenaline fueled energy out. If you've got a lot of nervous energy, doing that exercise can really help. And she just goes on about that. And so those are some different ways that you can ground yourself, and specific grounding techniques besides the ones that I've recommended. And there's another one on Helpline that also includes several types of grounding techniques, what grounding is, how it works, the risks, and the benefits. These Helpline articles are very helpful. I think they do a great overview of things. So Helpline, 30 grounding techniques to quiet distressing thoughts. 30 grounding techniques to quiet distressing thoughts, and that's by Helpline. So check that article out, and I'll put it in the resources as well. And it includes even more, but there's so many, I'm not going to include them all here for the sake of brevity. This is long enough. So the lowdown and the overall on grounding. Grounding is one of the most powerful techniques for viscerally releasing trauma from the body and having lasting effects. Trauma is literally a response in the brain and body that is trapped there. And with the right guidance, practice, and care, grounding techniques can help you relive those moments in a safe environment, bring them up and feel them, and allow them to finally flow through your neural network. Some people call it the chakra system, but through your neural network, so they can leave your body for good. And if something singular happened one time going through this may help, but it may be something that you have to do a dozen times or more, but it will release that from your body if you keep at it. Okay, and then of course there are different parts of you from different experiences that you'll work through as well on a larger scale. But this allows you to feel freer, lighter, and break chains of bondage from the enemy. I believe, like I said, that these are a gift from God, and that these literally break chains of bondage out of our body so that we can finally live the life of abundance in Christ that we were meant to live. And that is grounding. Like I said, there are a lot more techniques. Check out that Healthline article for even more. Pets is one. Also hugs. I think hugs are very grounding as well. But technique number 5, our final body practice, is music and sound therapy. Music and sound therapy. Again, very broad. There are a lot of subsets of music and sound therapy. And again, there are some controversies in the Christian community about what people should do and what they shouldn't do. I will leave that to your own discretion and discernment and prayer to figure out, but I'm just going to put the information out there. Music and sound therapy has many facets, but it's basically using relaxing music such as brainwave technology, music with diurnal beats, nature sounds, and soothing genres of music to calm the mind, lower the heartbeat, and slow down the brain, decreasing the stress response in the body. You use breathing techniques with these usually as well, or other grounding techniques or meditation, or you can just listen to the music. But many sites will caution people against using any kind of diurnal beat or brainwave music, and that's where it'll have like this sound. They've actually done research, and the brain actually does give off waves, and so specific kinds of resonances, frequencies, and sounds will actually change the pattern of your brain waves. There are different levels of brain waves. There's the beta, the theta, the alpha, and certain ones, your mind is in a mode where it gives off a certain frequency or brain wave when you're in intense concentration, working out, or involved in something very intense. All the way down to you're in meditation, you're slowed down, you're relaxed, all the way down to you're in a deep sleep, dreamless sleep, or another one is for like sleeping with dreams. So there are different levels, and the music simply puts your mind in that state quicker so that it helps you to be able to, especially those of us that have trouble controlling that and getting in those different levels. I know for me, for example, if I'm concentrating on something intensely and somebody interrupts me, it irritates the crap out of me. And I always thought I was a bad person for that, but I think that's just my body's inability to regulate. And I think some people are naturally born with that better more than others. But I also think that if you have problematic issues in the past that have messed up that wiring, you're not as likely able to regulate that and come in and out of those states, and that can cause a lot of problems. So I believe this music can help you to actually get in and out of those states better. It can help you work and concentrate on your work if you have ADHD, ADD. It can help you to relax when you get really worked up about something. So I personally think that the music is very helpful. And like I said, it may be good to proceed with caution on these, but try listening to such music on YouTube for a short time and experiment with it and see if it's for you. As always, use prayer, scripture, and discernment when trying any practice that involves the brain, but don't be afraid to try things that can help, including in the brain. Okay? Exploring, praying, and doing research is the only way you'll know what's right for you. So go try it and experiment. Or if you decide you don't want to try that, then at least do the research and find out what it's about. Learn about it. But this therapy is useful to do daily for a certain amount of time, such as listening to it before bed, because it can also be helpful to listen as you work or listen when you have an anxiety attack, become reactive, or have an episode of PTSD. Scientific evidence for the benefits of music are endless. Again, there is an article that I'll post from the National Institutes of Health. And the article basically talks about the impact of music on the bioelectrical oscillations of the brain, aka brainwaves. So it is a literal scientific thing. It's not just some weird woo-woo thing that people make up. There is endless scientific studies. They've done brain scans, EKGs, MRIs, and other detection equipment proves the validity of the science behind this and how music directly changes the brainwave state if it's the right kind of music. So it talks about the changes in the bioelectrical brainwave activity that occur while listening to music, especially specific kinds of music, and they do brainwave spectral analyses derived from findings of electroencephalograms, and is a powerful tool to obtain deep and objective insights into the effects of music on the brain. So it's definitely the EKG and all that. It proves that this works. This healing therapy works. A specific article that discusses the binaural beats music and technology. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, if you're skeptical about it, then read an article about it before you listen to it or try it. And there's an article called What Are Binaural Beats and How Do They Work? What are binaural beats and how do they work? And it's from medicalnewstoday.com. And it just basically talks about the sound. And when you do this, it's better to use surround sound. If you have some kind of over-the-ear headphones, that works best. But any kind of headphones are better overall. But there are delta patterns, theta patterns, alpha patterns, beta patterns, and gamma patterns. And the binaural beats help you to get into the right frequency for the right situation, whether you want to dream or you want to go into a deep dreamless sleep, you want to exercise, you want to get more focused. There are different levels here. So you can look at all those as well. It goes into the benefits of binaural beats, how to use them, the research behind them, the takeaway. So as always, this is based on scientific research that's been established for 20, 30 plus years. So don't be afraid to experiment and see if it will help you. If it makes you feel weird at first, try just a little bit at a time. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. There are a lot of other therapies out there. So do some exploring and experimenting and see what works for you. Recommended resources. Dr. Jeffrey Thompson is one of the foremost authorities on this work, and he creates a lot of albums that have this kind of music that's relaxing. Maybe listen to some samples and see if you want to download them. You can go to YouTube and listen to some of that as well. But he has done some of the revolutionary work on how specific kinds of music can impact brain waves. Keep in mind that you can just listen to classical music. You can listen to music with with nature sounds. You can listen to other kinds of relaxing music. So there's a lot of great stuff out there. There are some apps that are also great. One that I use is called Sleep Melodies. It's great. It has everything you could ever imagine sound-wise. And you can mix the sounds and create, save that combination and listen to it when you need that particular one. It also includes the diurnal beats. It includes all of the different levels that you need, so you can get in the mode of what you want to get into. It's called Sleep Melodies. It's like $5, so it's really worth the money. One that might require discernment, but is also a useful app, is called Insight Timer. It's a meditation app, but it also has sound effects. So that might be one that would help you. They have great audio programs that might help calm you and get into a calmer brainwave state. Like I said, YouTube and regular music channels have videos and audios with nature sounds, piano, binaural beats, classical music, and other relaxing sounds and forms of music. So my advice and strategies from my experience, I've been listening to this music for 20 plus years and it has never led me astray. It helps me to feel calm. It helps me to get in that brainwave state that I need to be in. Some of it works better than others, so find what works for you. But most people will find specific forms of relaxing music like classical or nature sounds with or without music calming. These might include birdsong, waterfalls, oceans, storms, flowing water, wind chimes, night or frog sounds, bowls like the Tibetan bowls or like glass bowls, like that. White noise. There are also 3 different kinds: pink noise, white noise, and brown noise. You might experiment with those to get your mind in a different state. They're just like shh, but they're different levels of that kind of white noise. Nature sounds set to music are especially relaxing in my opinion. And in terms of using binaural beats and similar technologies, use your discretion. If you've never used this kind of music before, perhaps listen to it for short periods of time after reading about it and do research on it before doing it. Some people use such music for meditation, prayer, exercise, work, and journaling as well. So it can also enhance studying and work, but I think it actually enhances your relationship with God because it puts you in a mindset to be more connected to Him, to practice His presence more. And it puts your brain in a place where prayer, you're more receptive, you're more likely to hear what the Holy Spirit is trying to tell you. So I think these are very helpful therapies. And I think that they're meant to be used to help us to connect with God more. And so, yeah, that was the 5th one. That was the last one. I will include all of the resources that I've included in each of these practices in the resource section. Please keep in mind that you can find the podcast on the podcast site. You can find it on my YouTube channel, which is Christian Emotional Recovery. And you can also find my work at rachelleroy.com if you're interested in writing a book. I can help you with that, especially a book that is transformational or Christian living. And I can also help you if you go to the YouTube channel called Trauma Survivors Unite Christian Emotional Recovery. Trauma Survivors Unite Christian Emotional Recovery. Check it out. Join our community, and we'd love to have you. Thank you so much again for listening. Remember that you are loved, God loves you, and you've got this. You can heal. God will heal you, but you have to do the work. It's not easy. It doesn't always feel good, but oh my gosh, it is so worth it. And I believe God gave us these therapies to help us to heal. So experiment, use your discretion, pray, read the scriptures, use discernment. This is the 3rd of a series of 4 podcasts on specific practices that can help heal trauma and to help heal problematic emotions. And the first one was traditional Christian practices. The second one was mind practices. The third one was this one, which is body practices. And next time we'll be covering body therapy practices with a licensed professional to heal trauma. So we'll focus more on ones that you would do with professionals and you would not necessarily want to do on your own. So I make a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed professional, but I'm showing you what I've learned from my experience and what has helped me. And you have to figure out what works for you because everybody is different. But God bless you. Thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to speaking with you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Christian Emotional Recovery, hosted by Rachel Leroy. For links to this week's resources and to join the discussion, check out this episode's show notes at christianemotionalrecovery.com, where you can also find links to our YouTube channel and Facebook group. Join our email list and get other episodes and resources. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review the podcast and tell a friend who may benefit from this message. See you next time. And remember, beloveds, God loves you, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made.